What's going on, guys? This is Shane Simmons with the Art of the Flying Eye podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking to Ainslie Heilich. Ainslie is a webmaster and designer, a tattooer, and a shop owner. So hang around for just a minute and we'll get right into their interview. This episode is brought to you by unboundsounds.com. Unbound Sounds has awesome wireless headphones and audio products, and as a matter of fact, if you use my code Simmons Tattoo SIMMONS TATTOO at checkout, you'll be able to get 20% off of everything in their store. All right, so we are here with Ainslie Heilich. If you don't mind telling everybody who you are and what you do.
My name is Ainslie Heilich, and I am a tattoo artist. I have been tattooing for over 16 years now, and I don't know what else I do.
You don't know?
I do lots of other things, but yes, that's my main income producing occupation.
Well, I mean, what kind of other things do you get into?
I am a kind of a pseudo amateur intermediate web designer, graphic designer, and I do social media, and I'm the webmaster for musician G.E. Smith, who most famously known for being on the Saturday Night Live band for 10 years. And I also am the webmaster and social media manager for the Independent Order of Oddfellows.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Which is how you and I met.
It is indeed. So now, how did you actually get into that?
I got into that purely just by just nosing my way in and asking, really.
Oh, yeah?
It's amazing what asking gets the doors open to.
Yeah, fair enough. So, as far as the tattooing part of that, what did you do, I guess, before you got into tattooing?
So, I pretty much have the whole, cheesy, typical artist response of, I've been an artist my whole life. So I definitely fall into that kind of typical category. I always was, making art, even as like a 5-year-old. One of my earliest memories is making little art projects for people. And I just was always really just obsessed with drawing, and I ended up going to college for art. I have an art degree, and I really was drawn to the idea of doing art that was a very hands-on medium with a very a high one-on-one interaction ratio with the paying client, and tattooing kind of kept ticking off all these boxes of things of what I wanted to accomplish with my art, and I kind of, through process of elimination, kind of arrived at tattooing.
Yeah, it definitely does satisfy a lot of those requirements.
Yes.
So how did you actually get into tattooing? What does that story look like?
So my apprentice story is I graduated from college in 2002, and after that I was kind of like, okay, now what? I had kind of flirted with the idea in my head of maybe doing tattooing, but I knew it was, at that time, it was still kind of socially unacceptable, and I knew my parents weren't going to be thrilled about it.
Yeah.
So I kind of meditated on it for a while, and I approached one shop with a portfolio, and the guy really liked it. However, he had already promised that he was going to apprentice another tattooer that is still working with him to this day. And sorry about my cat. He decided to join the interview. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. I had that positive feedback of, I would have taken you, but, and then the womp of, well, you'll have to wait a while. So yeah. I was like, okay. And not knowing exactly how long a while would be, I decided to kind of look around at other shops, and eventually found another shop where a guy that I was working in a deli at the time, and a guy that was the butcher at the deli was getting a tattoo done by this guy, but the guy didn't do his own designing. So this butcher asked me if I would design this tattoo for him. I'm like, sure, I'll design this for you, but you have to put in a good word for me with this guy. So, long story short, the guy that ended up mentoring me is like, oh, who did this? Who did these designs for you? You know, trying to kind of act half impressed but not impressed.
Yeah.
So for the second session, I ended up going with the guy to the shop, and basically that was my interview for the apprenticeship. And yeah, so after that, you know, I was at that shop for 4 years before I decided to kind of go out on my own and open my own.
Oh yes. Okay. So excuse me. So you'd been tattooing for about 4 years before you started your own?
Yeah. I was actually, about 3.5 years on skin by the time I actually opened my own shop, which was a completely, you know, one of those completely ignorant ideas. But at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do because there was a whole situation with that shop that I don't want to get into on a public thing. But basically, me and the two other people at the shop all left simultaneously at the same time, and
that happens sometimes.
That I was the one who had the means to be able to actually open a shop for all of us to work at, and that was kind of the intention. And that didn't work out either. Learned a lot of expensive, emotionally painful lessons along the way. But yeah, I definitely took the long road. I took the long road to success, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say you're doing really, really well now. Seeing your shop set up the way it is it's awesome. Like being downstairs from the Oddfellows Lodge and all that stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving to Illinois was one of those completely out of my character decisions. But I knew that if I wanted to live the lifestyle I wanted to live and work the work life I wanted to work and have the kind of shop I wanted, that it was going to require a radical change. And where I was living on the East Coast, and it was just so expensive and cost prohibitive to do anything that had any amount of risk with it. So since my whole family had migrated out here, me and my business partner followed suit. And so we've been open here for 8 years, and it's totally taken me in a direction I never thought it would go. But
What do you mean?
Well, for starters, after the whole debacle of opening a shop and having people work for me, I've had sworn off having anybody work for me or apprenticing anybody. I pretty much was like, no, I'm never going to do that. That's just the worst thing ever. And after a couple years of working here, me just being a tattooer, and Laura was running a retail store of handmade goods that was, you know, people like artists were consigning their handmade goods, and the tattooing was just so popular, and I was so overworked, and so we're like, okay, well, maybe we could get somebody in here part-time to kind of help with the overflow. And that kind of is what started kind of chipping away at my kind of my own personal discomfort of having to be a boss and being responsible for other artists or training people. And so it started from there, and I have 3 artists that work for me, and I've trained all of them. And hopefully, you know, ideally what I'm wanting is basically to have like a good group of artists that kind of, we all do our own thing, but we're a family and we work together as a team, and kind of we all support each other. So it's, you know, not like we're competing against each other. So like some shops are kind of like that, and I don't like that kind of environment. So it's definitely, it's interesting where like the business kind of starts taking on a life of its own outside of myself. And that's where it's kind of nice to have things like Oddfellows to kind of be like a hobby that I can do that's outside of work and outside of that work identity, because my work identity is no longer my artist identity like it used to be when like Vintage Karma was only me and I had complete control over it. It's now that it's like there's like a bunch of us that are working there, and we're all Vintage Karma, and so it's not just me anymore. So I can't be 100% Vintage Karma. It kind of, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
yeah, I mean, you've got to have some way to kind of separate yourself from it so that you're not just focusing on that 24 hours a day.
Right.
So you said you lived out on the East Coast. Where was it that you were living before?
So before we moved out here, we were living in northwestern New Jersey, right over on the Pennsylvania border. So when I ended up opening my shop, I opened it in Pennsylvania because the laws around tattooing there are a lot more flexible, and New Jersey has some strict laws with it that the way my apprenticeship was done, there was some paperwork stuff that my mentor had failed to file and stuff. So basically, any of us the three of us, we couldn't work in New Jersey at that time because we didn't have enough paperwork of like tax returns and stuff to prove. Yeah, so we had to basically jump the river for a few years to establish enough of a record before we could, enter back into the pool in New Jersey. So
crazy.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird situation, but it worked out in the end.
Yeah. Well, obviously your current shop is rad.
Thank you.
So, I mean, what do you actually wish you had known before you hopped right into tattooing?
Oh man, I think. Let me see what I wrote down here. I had something written down good here for that. I think for me, I think that it's okay to not be perfect. I think that's my main advice for like younger artist self is it's okay to take a risk and let it be a failure and to learn from it, because I tend to really have, I think most artists do, suffer from that, like that imposter syndrome. And I really,
100%.
Yeah. And so like that imposter syndrome really like shows up in some sneaky ways. Like it'll mask itself for me as, procrastination. Like I'll put off something because I'm afraid that if I do it, I'm not going to do it to my unreasonably high expectations.
Oh, totally. 100%.
So I'll keep putting it off, and then I'll get more anxiety about it. And it would have been all fine if I just did it and took care of it and did the piece or the design, and instead of just sitting on it and getting myself tied up in the knots about it. So I feel like I'm really trying to kind of work through that. Even younger artists, as in like a month ago, I'm telling myself this advice of don't worry about it all being perfect. Just do something,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I feel like this shelter in place has been a kind of a great personal experiment to kind of try to challenge my normal way of my normal art production sort of ways. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell myself the same thing all the time, pretty much every day. Force myself to just start something. Otherwise, that whole executive dysfunction thing takes over, and it will never happen. And you'll worry about it the whole time.
Yes. And it's like this analysis paralysis that you just are stuck like Velcro, and it's preventing and that the conclusion I came to is that procrastination and this whole not feeling like I'm going to do it good enough, so I sit and analyze it to death before I can even proceed, is holding me back artistically, because it's preventing me from having other ideas to enter my mind and having other kind of pursuits, because I'm kind of basically log damming the way every step of the way and creating these traps that I'm going to fall into all along, and it's slowing my artistic journey down. So I'm still trying to kind of internalize it and figure out what that looks like to just do it, to not to be, cheesy with the Nike slogan.
Oh, no. I mean, I totally understand.
It's true. It's like, why am I not doing this right now? I should just do it. Just do it. Go, do it. 1, 2, 3, go,
Yeah, I had one of my YouTube videos not too long ago was on tips for how to stay kind of productive, how to stay motivated. And one of the things that really helps me, well, when I can actually tell myself to do it, is to schedule things. Like if I know that I want to paint more, then I will tell myself okay, this time of day, roughly 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just sit down and do 10 minutes of whatever this is. And if it sticks, more often than not, I'll end up, doing I'll sit there and do at least 1 or 2 solid paintings just straight through, and I'll look up at the clock and it's 4 a.m. and I have no idea where any of that time went. But even if you don't get into it, you've only spent 10 minutes on it, and you can just move on, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have that little voice in your head, like, constantly nagging you. Well, hey, you should be doing that thing. Hey, you're supposed to be doing that thing right now.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've maybe falsely gone about my life thinking is that little voice was my discipline and my motivation, when really it's a bad voice.
Yeah, that voice is an asshole.
Like destructive, tearing me down voice, not a, if I sit and listen to that voice enough, I'm going to get up and do it. And then even if it's just, for me, just starting is the hardest thing. And after I just get up and just jump in and take that first step with a project, I just feel so much better. Or even if I don't complete the project and it's taking longer than I thought, it's like at least I started it and I have a handle on it and I know where I stand with it.
Yeah.
And it's not this big, giant, scary thing. So,
yeah, I mean, a lot of it's kind of a trope at this point, but a lot of artists still don't get that, like, a blank piece of paper or a blank canvas is the scariest thing in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because
I've been seeing videos on, like, what to do when you get a new sketchbook, and it was like, basically, it's like you take the first page and you scribble on it, or you, like, rip it out or something to destroy it, so that way it's not perfect. So, like, it takes away that pressure of, like, oh my god, this book is so beautiful and clean and pristine and nice, and it's like one of these nice sketchbooks. I'm gonna ruin it. Anything I'm gonna write or draw is not gonna be worthy of it. And I feel like that's a perfect analogy to what we probably face as artists, as far as not being able to take that first step because we're just kind of, like, our own internal, like, doubt is just eating at us.
Yeah, and in my experience, it's that much more being a tattoo artist, just for the fact that you realize that your canvas, your sketchbook that you're working on, is a living, breathing person that has to live with that forever. It's just, yeah, there's just so much stress involved. Like, every tattoo artist that I have ever known is just, they have some level of, I guess, what you would call extreme anxiety.
Yes. I think it's one of those things that, like, and I teach this to my apprentice whenever, like, I'm training anybody to tattoo. Not that I, like, train, like, tons of people. I'm on my third apprentice. But I tell everybody that I've trained that feeling that you feel, like, once they start their first tattoo, and it's like that feeling you feel right now, get used to it, because it never goes away.
Yeah.
And it might not be as intense or as present, or it'll show up at other times, but that feeling will always be there, because in the back of your head, even if you do, like, the best tattoo that you're like, this is, like, the best tattoo I've ever done, I did a great job, once you send that tattoo out the door, there's always that chance that client is going to either have a problem with the healing, or they're going to look at it and there's going to be something about it that just wasn't quite right for them. It could be the best tattoo in the world, but it could be not for them, and there's always that kind of, that little bit, that's that self-doubt in the back of my head that, oh, I did a good job, now something could go wrong, or, oh, I'm about to do this tattoo on this person that traveled from hours away and waited months and months and months. I better really bring my A game, because this person's expectations are probably through the roof of who I am and what I can do. And people are like, oh, that's so cool. You tattoo people that come from, oh, that's so cool. What's it feel like to be, that booked up? And I was just like, it's scary. It's,
Oh my God, yes.
It's like you trade one set of problems of, like, oh, like, yeah, I'm not hungry anymore and I'm not worried about my bills being paid, but I've, like, traded up for a new set of problems that are, like, the demands that I have to meet for other people and the expectations for other people that I have to exceed, and the personal growth I have to do as an artist. And also, there's just so many things that it's like spinning plates.
Oh, yeah, guaranteed.
It's impossible to keep them all spinning well at the same time. There's always a plate that's, like, wobbling or falling off. And I think that's why a lot of tattooers that, it's like almost like you get 10 years in. Like, once you make it through, like that 3 to 5 year of make it or break it in the industry, where most artists end up quitting, like, once you get to that 10-year mark is, like, the burnout point, where you see a lot of artists kind of either they stop caring and their tattoo quality starts nosediving, or their reputation got to a point that they're too comfortable and they stop applying themselves.
Yeah.
But something mentally happens that they almost like take a step away from the tattooing, either artistically or emotionally or something, and they end up losing either their position or their status or their quality or their reputation. And I pay a lot of attention to the older tattooers that were at the top of their game when I was learning to tattoo, and seeing now on social media how they're handling them being towards the end of their careers and how they're struggling. And because I know that someday I'm going to be that artist,
yeah,
and I'm going to be struggling, and I need to know the point. What's the point when you quit? Because there's an expiration date on all of us tattooers. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We'll all have to have that hard conversation someday, and I'm very aware of that fact that I'm at like the midpoint. I'm like a middle-aged tattooer now, like at the halfway. I hope I'm in the halfway point. I hope I got a good 15 plus years in me still.
Yeah. Before
my back or my shoulders or whatever give out.
I mean, it's pretty much guaranteed that at least one of those things is probably going to start getting kind of bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that I was told before I even started, before they would allow me to begin my apprenticeship, is they said, "Are you okay with having like bad eyes, bad hands, and a screwed up back for the rest of your life?" They said this is guaranteed. At the very minimum, one of these things is going to happen within 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely do a lot of things to try to combat that. I don't do as much as I should. I know I should exercise more. I've tried eating a little bit better this past year, so I've lost a little bit of weight. I've been trying to, I always try to watch my emotions. I never try to, go into a tattoo stressed out where I'm all tense and like white knuckling it, because that is just, the tattoo suffers and I physically and emotionally suffer, and I'm exhausted the rest of the day.
It's crazy how exhausted you'll be, where people they look at you, what you do, and they say, well, I mean, you're just sitting down all day, you're just drawing, like it can't be that taxing. But you kind of touched on it a little bit, the emotional part of that sort of stress is one of the biggest things for me as well. Like, just
it's like we take the SATs every day. That's the kind of stress we have, because you have to be focusing, like laser focus, for hours and hours at a time, and that is exhausting. And when you first start tattooing, you can't jump into a 3-hour tattoo right off the bat, because you don't have not only the physical stamina of the tattooing, but the mental stamina. You have to start off with the small pieces for many reasons, obviously skill level and stuff, but also being able to physically do it and mentally stay focused that long and not run out of mental steam halfway through the thing.
Oh, totally.
Because that sucks when it's like, say you've got a busy day and it's your late session, and you're halfway through the late session and you're running out of steam, and you realize you're kind of starting a little sloppier, everything's getting a little, taking a little bit longer. I hate when I hit that point in the day. And
yeah, I mean,
it's like one of those things. I'm starting to notice it more and more as I'm getting older, and I'm trying not to do as many 2 sessions a day, just doing like 1 big session a day instead of 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I switched to rotary machines early on to help with the carpal tunnel. I switched to, wireless pedal pretty early on to help with, my sitting position. I have one of those weird, like, air-filled, like, nubby cushions on my seat for my hips, and 8 million lights and all this crazy shit that it looks like, I've got this ridiculous, like, transformer-looking setup, but it's all to help keep my body, as properly aligned, and my eye strain down, and all sorts of stuff, just so, like, I can work longer. So I don't mind looking like an idiot to, stretch out my career another 5-10 years.
Yeah, right. Because, I mean, all of the old school guys that you see at conventions and all this stuff, like, they all kind of, none of them can, like, quite move right, and they all look like they're constantly in pain. Their hands hurt, and they're all curled up. Like, when they sit down, they look like they turn into a human question mark, and I've never seen one of them not be double fisting some, like, triple in each hand of some sort of just straight liquor, just to kind of try to deal with that.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why drug abuse does end up creeping into our work lives because you're artists, you're tattooers, you can kind of live that lifestyle if you want, but a lot of it probably is just to kind of cope with the fucking pain,
Yeah.
And
both physically and
then,
emotionally.
a lot of those old timers, I mean, look at the equipment I had to learn on, like just things like the height of the client bed being one of those old heavy dentist chairs that I couldn't adjust, or like I couldn't adjust my chair up and down, or working for years in very uncomfortable positions because, well, this chair looks cool, so I want to sit on it because it looks cool. I don't care if it's uncomfortable. And now I'm kind of at the point where it's like I'm willing to just throw away anything I've been using if I feel like there's something that's going to serve me better.
Absolutely.
I don't care if it looks stupid. Like I just bought some of those
the work is the most important thing.
And they look stupid. But I'm like, if a wireless battery pack is going to help me, like, maybe sit a little easier or whatever because I'm not tied to a power unit, then I'm going to give it a try. Even though I look, my machine's going to look like some weird Lego thing, but screw it. The tattoo's what's important, not me, how good I look while I'm tattooing.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And of course there was the attitude that I always got, well, a lot of tattooers that I've talked to got when you start kind of talking about things like hurting you or being like super inconvenient, and you can tell that if you allow it to go on, it could cause you real issues. And the overwhelming voice from a lot of the older generations of tattooers is, oh, well, you're just not a real tattooer if you don't hate your life.
Yeah, it's like, well, you're not a tattooer if you're not running a really old Mickey Sharp's machine that's not running right, and it's throwing sparks and it's electrocuting you and your client, and you have to deal with, uncomfortable, setup situations like, for example, like looking at like conventions. I personally don't like working at conventions. I've worked at two and found the experience to be miserable because you're crammed in this little booth that's all fabric enclosed and totally not sanitary, and you have to work off the furniture that's there because you can't bring all your stuff because it won't fit. So it's like you're put people up on folding tables and you're in a computer chair. It's just, and you're using the banquet chairs to as leg rests and stuff. It's just not comfortable to work like that at all. And I think a lot of people are just used to working like that, and that's just how they work in their shops. And they don't think, oh, maybe there's a better way I can do this. They just accept it because it's like they think that suffering is part of what makes you a good tattooer or something, or a real tattooer maybe.
Yeah. There's like a lot of that no true Scotsman sort of attitude. Like you're not a real tattooer if you don't blah blah blah. If you don't hurt yourself, if you don't like do all these things that are terrible for you. Yeah, and I mean, like we were talking a second ago about like the emotional toll of tattooing. A lot of people don't really think about like the kind of stuff that we hear from clients, and it really it can really weigh on you sometimes. Like we I guess, for lack of a better way to phrase it, we kind of play therapist for people a lot of times, because I mean a lot of the pieces they're getting, they mean a lot to them. They're trying to kind of heal from something. They're getting some sort of emotional release out of getting that piece. And I mean, we hear about like suicides and murders and death and kids dying and car wrecks and just every single day.
Assaults, all sort, like drug abuse, all sorts of things.
Diseases and cancer.
It's heavy shit. We hear some, because it's almost like tattooing, because it releases that fight or flight response, all the the endorphins and adrenaline and dopamine and all those endocrine systems firing off, and it's almost like truth serum for people, and it's like they just start talking and like it's like a confessional almost. And I definitely believe in that kind of little bit of woo-woo, like spiritual aspect of tattooing, where especially like in the case of like if you're like, say it's a memorial tattoo and somebody's really hurting, and we're acting almost as like a kind of like a shaman type practitioner, where we convert their emotional and their spiritual pain, we transform it into physical pain and then release it for them.
Yeah,
so they're able to heal, and then they have a permanent reminder of that process. And I mean, I don't know if that's, if there's any, science to pain and releasing pain or whatever, and how that works. But I mean, I guess maybe kind of like in the same way as like if somebody went and got like a really deep tissue massage or something to release like a I don't know, like if you've been carrying anxiety and it like gave you bad knots in your back and you had to go get them worked out by like a massage therapist or something to release all the fascia and the lactic acid, like a spiritual version of that.
Yeah, because I mean, it takes just this general pain, like if you're going through some really rough stuff, and you kind of feel like you're just walking around in some sort of like vague cloud of just something of negativity. It takes all of that and laser focuses that in one spot that you can look at, you can feel it, you can see it, and all of the rest of that stuff just kind of it goes away for that amount of time that's happening, and you can just kind of you've got that time where you're sitting in this chair doing nothing else, where you can just deal with it. Like it kind of compacts it all into one little spot where you can tell yourself, okay, cool, this hurts, but I can deal with this. And then when it's done, it's just gone.
Yeah. And like, it's almost like, for me, like, it's almost like the best part of the whole thing is when a client gets up and they look in the mirror and then like, you see like them kind of like hand to the face and they smile and then they start crying.
Yeah.
That's better. That's better than like getting paid good money or whatever. Like that right there is like we know we did a good job and we helped that person love their bodies more,
mm-hmm.
and like feel good about themselves. And that's why they're like, oh, I heard people get addicted to tattoos. They get addicted to the pain and how it feels. I'm like, no, people don't get addicted to the pain unless you're like an adrenaline junkie. You could get addicted to it, like jumping out of an airplane or whatever. But people get addicted to how it makes them feel after they get the tattoo. That's why they keep coming back, because they're like, holy shit, like, I love my body now. And like recently, case in point, I have a longtime client, and she had her ex-husband's name on her boob, and it said Ron. And it was just jerked lettering. It was crooked. And a way long time back after she gotten divorced, she'd gone to like, just your random old school, come here, this is what you get kind of artist. And the only thing they could think of to fix this name was to add an F and a T, so it said front.
Are you fucking kidding me?
And it was crooked. So she had a crooked Ron front on her, but the worst part is it looked like it said fart.
What the fuck?
So so I've been tattooing her for a long ass time, for like probably about 5 years now. And we finally, we were doing a huge project on her. So we finally get around to getting rid of front. And no lie, within a month, within probably a couple weeks of me covering up that tattoo, she gets her a nice new boyfriend and they're in love. And it's like, I gave her back this part of her body, and it like lifted this blockage that was like holding her down, because she had to have that reminder every time she looked in the mirror of this like thing, but then once it was gone, it's like she like elevated herself to this new level and like law of attraction herself like into this like amazing new relationship. And I've had clients that like I've tattooed them and they completely weren't unaware of they were completely unaware of each other, and then they met like say like at a bar or something and start talking over the tattoos that I've done. And then they end up like dating and like hooking up and stuff. And it's like, and I'm talking like people that have like, middle-aged people that have, been like a little bit more down on life, like recently getting divorced and you're in your 40s or your 50s and you're like, man, like what's left of life? And then all of a sudden you get a tattoo and you're like, there's a lot left of life. And then you like end up meeting people. It's like this amazing transformation in the confidence that it gives people. And I think it's like an important self-care thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not for everybody, but I mean, it's definitely, for the people that seek it out, I think it could be a very therapeutic process.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, it just lets you know that you're still alive. Like you can still do something. There are real things in the world that you have power over that you can change in a positive way.
And there's like I feel like there's like something about like the conversation that every client must have in their head when you start that tattoo, because I feel like probably most of the time it's like you start the tattoo and then like they're like, okay, this is so bad, and then about 2 minutes in they're like, shit, well, what did I think I was doing today? And then they finally settle in. But, you know, like every time you got to probably go through that conversation in your head, like, oh, man, I don't know if I can make it. And then you're like kind of, I could do this. I could do this. And coaching yourself. And it's like kind of, I don't know, like it kind of forces you to do those mental gymnastics to like really like, I could do this. I've got this. I'm, you know, I don't know. It's like a ritual in a way or something.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with that, but it connects us to our most primordial processes of pain and what does pain mean, and it's all mental, and it's there's a lot of components I'm trying to explain simply, and I'm bungling it.
No, I totally get that. As far as like the pain aspect, I was watching something the other day that was explaining about like the opioid crisis and why and how those sort of chemicals affect people, and the idea that pain is mostly cognitive, and a lot of what these substances do is they kind of turn off that part of your brain that recognizes that signal, and like it doesn't do anything to like mitigate the signal. It just tells your brain, hey, don't worry about that. And yeah, it's a super weird kind of idea for me.
Interesting. And I mean, I guess that's like with almost like that genetic predisposition people have to addiction, and how the synapses really just whatever the addiction is, be it, you know, adrenaline junkies who have to jump out of planes and put themselves at like risk to feel, you know what I mean, like to feel something, like that's a, you know, also like a form of addiction, you know, bungee jumping, all that kind of thrill seeker stuff, that the aggressive thrill seeking, you know, not just like, oh, I'm going to do this for my 40th birthday. It's like aggressively having to up the ante every time into more and more dangerous pursuits. And it's like almost like there's like something pre-wired that's like the whatever the substance or whatever the activity is fills in that missing block that the genetics left, but it might not be a good positive thing that's filling that block. It could be something that could cause harm long term, like, you know, alcohol or, you know, heroin or meth or whatever.
Yeah, doing meth and owning a tiger farm.
Yes, owning meth and doing doing meth and owning a tiger farm, or owning meth and doing a tiger farm, which was pretty much also what happened.
Yeah. It's the same.
Yeah, so same. In that instance, with all of them, I think that's pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of mistakes, what's something in your career, I guess, or either tattoos or artwork, or I mean the business or anything, like what's something that you feel that you've either failed at or that you could maybe do better?
I've failed at being, and a lot of it comes back to doubt. I failed at being brave enough to act decisively on things as quickly as I should. I tend to be a people pleaser, and I tend to allow myself to be directed to an extent. I do have a limit. I do have a very, very defined limit of, I'm not going to do a tattoo that's going to, you know, not hold up well or not look well, or if I think the content or whatever, if I think the whole concept isn't good, I will try to help them find a better solution to the question.
Yeah.
But as far as that, to a point where before I get to that point, before that, I do allow myself to kind of be walked over a little bit. I'm a little bit of a, like, I don't like conflict, so I'll avoid it at all costs, which can be very bad. So that artistically can cause problems between me and clients or between me and people I work with. So I feel like I wish I was a little bit more able to be brave enough to resolve issues as they come up, as opposed to allowing them to sit and fester.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
feel like that's like a common thread throughout my life of where I've found errors.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really important. I mean, one of the things that I've always heard about just decision making in general is the speed in which you make decisions can be a giant can play a giant role in just making a decision at all. That making a decision is better than sitting and not making any decision at all. Even if it turns out to be the wrong one, you've still not wasted that time, so that you know that's wrong and you can go back and do the other thing, or at least learn for the future.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm really kind of trying, like I said, like a lot of this has all been because of like my own, just like, almost like, I feel like I've been like a meditating monk this like lockdown, and just doing all this like inner like meditation and like writing and thinking and, you know, talking with, you know, friends and stuff about, you know, what's the point of everything kind of conversations. So I'm hoping that it'll, you know, these realizations that I'm having this, you know, over this time, that I am going to, once things go kind of, not that they're going to go back to normal, or find their new normal, rather, like once we go back to work, basically, like I hope that I still carry that with me, and it's not just like a temporary realization. Like, you know, like whenever you go on vacation and you're like, I'm the best version of myself right now because all the woes of the world are far away. So I'm here, I'm having a good time, it's beautiful, it's amazing, I'm on vacation, I don't go to work, I don't got an answer to no one, I do whatever I want, you know. And I hope that, you know, that wisdom of that, like, that moment stays. But I expect some of it to kind of start fading away, but I have to probably keep reminding myself actively to, you know, just make a decision, just do it, just go forward, you know, stop sitting and worrying and angsting about it, or not feeling like it's not going to be good enough, or it's, you know, not going to impress people, or it's not going to get enough likes, or, oh, nobody's going to like it, or what's the point of doing it, or, you know, and it's not going to make me any money, so it's not any value. So I do a lot of that kind of stupid circular mental gymnastics, running in circles, and yeah, I need to stop doing that.
Yeah, I totally get it. It's really hard to not do that sometimes, especially when you get stressed out. I mean, with like the whole COVID-19 thing, and like non-essential businesses being shut down and all that stuff, it's really hard to not kind of freak the fuck out sometimes about that. Just from so many different sides, so many different parts of that equation are worrisome, I guess. But I mean, speaking of the whole COVID-19 thing, like how specifically has that affected your business?
So as of today, we got our shelter in place extended for an additional month. So we are extended through the end of May now. So we won't be, as of right now, on was this April 23rd? We won't be opening until June 1st. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, and so basically, like, we have several months worth of clients, because like my books were pretty book solid through that. So there's a lot of people we're gonna have to get rescheduled, but we can't reschedule them yet because we don't know if they're gonna keep bumping the day further out. So we have to kind of wait until pretty much close to the end before we reschedule everybody. So it might be a little short notice for some people, but luckily we did get the PPP business loan.
Awesome.
We were very lucky. Had a very good banker that would like email my business partner at like 10, 11 at night to make sure that the paperwork was in and stuff like that. So we got it in right under the wire. So we were very, very, very fortunate, and that is a huge stress relief too, because
no, guarantee it.
Yeah, it's
so you got some of it before.
Now that I don't have to worry about that, you know, it's kind of hopefully we'll make this next month. I'll go into another kind of, now that that's one less stress to worry about.
Yeah.
I'll, hopefully get into some art and stuff again. Now that almost like the immediate financial and business needs have been taken care of.
Yeah.
So
you got some of it before Ruth's Chris took the rest?
Luckily. Yeah, we got basically they cut off I don't know, have you ever seen that God, this is going to really be a random image, but Mickey and the Beanstalk?
Oh god, yeah. The tiny wafer thin sliver.
Slicing the bean.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's all thin. It's meow.
It's wispy and translucent.
Yes, that's we got our little bean slice before before all the big businesses got all the whole bushel of beans there.
Yeah, right. Jesus. Yeah. So it's that whole situation has been
It's infuriating.
Yeah. I was gonna use the word shit show.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think it's what it is it's just showing more and more that the whole idea of our freedoms and our ability to advance as an individual through our bootstraps, etc., it's all an illusion that they want us to believe, and they're just going to take the money anyway.
Yeah,
and give
right.
just enough money out to let people think that it's a fair, equitable system. But no, it was never fair from the start. And we're just lucky we had a really aggressive banker on our side. Really, that's really it.
Yeah, it's definitely revealed some things, both in the business world and on a personal level.
Yeah.
People definitely start showing their true colors when they start getting that stressed out.
Yes.
I'm seeing that more and more. Yeah, I understand it's rough on everybody. We're all basically living in one giant trauma response.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people just being hateful.
Yeah, and I understand where some of the criticism is coming from, because we should be critical of anything that's happening, and we should be allowed to be critical of anything that's happening.
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, when it goes from legitimate criticisms into wackadoo crazy land that could potentially be putting people's lives at risk, I would love to know what happens when all these people that went to these, say if you went to a protest and you got infected, and then you brought it home and you infected your whole family, and then your child dies or something, would that change that person's mind? Would they be like, oh my God, I made a mistake, I was wrong? Or would it
or would they try to rationalize it?
I'm not wishing any of those people to get sick.
Oh, of course not.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, as a hypothetical, what would it take for people to respect what we're being told to do and realize that human life we're not in as control of our lives as we think we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's really what it comes down, because it comes down to personal responsibility. And it's a fucking microbe doesn't give a shit about personal responsibility. Yeah. That microbe doesn't care if you washed your hands or stayed at home or wore a mask or whatever. It doesn't care if you're a billionaire. It doesn't care if you're, homeless. That virus, if it's going to set up shop in your respiratory system, and if you have the right whatever makeup that it, thrives under, you're going to die. And it's sad because,
I just see a lot of people that, a lot of people and companies that just as the unifying characteristic that catches my attention in all this is that they just don't seem to care about anyone else.
No, it's no. I mean, why would they? Why would they care about how somebody lives if it's if giant corporations have zero problem laying off tens of thousands of workers because they're moving factories to overseas, or they're cutting back production or whatever, to save money on something, or like, or outsourcing or whatever. If they don't have a problem basically cutting all these people off, why would they have a problem if any of those people died? You know,
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not really,
I don't
it's
get
not
it.
really a far jump.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's just it's something that I don't understand. Um,
Yeah.
I don't get it. But
Yeah. And it's times like that that like I'm thankful that I am my own boss and I can make the decisions about whether I'm going to work or not
yeah,
without risking losing my job. But I think of, because like most of the people that are going to a lot of these jobs, outside of first responders or like medical workers or like professionals like that, like a lot of it are like the lowest wage earners who don't have insurance and don't have any medical care or anything like that, and they're the ones that are maybe going to be the most prone to getting sick by working.
yeah, right. Like gas station employees and grocery store employees and fast food workers and
like the other day I read an article about the U.S. Postal Service and how they're struggling right now, and this was last several days ago, so the number's probably higher now, but like at that time they're like 30 postal workers had died
holy
from
shit.
the virus. And I know there's like, tens of thousands of postal workers in the world or in America or whatever. But like, still, that's kind of like when you're like 30 postal workers died because they were delivering the fucking mail. Like if they didn't have to, it's just almost like if there was a better way, like if we had the equipment, I don't know. It's hard to know if like those lives could have been saved if there was better protection or whatever, but it's hard to say. But
yeah, there are just so many unknowns, so many questions there, and that's
yeah.
honestly part of what's really frustrating about that whole situation. Is just it's really difficult. It's so widespread and encompasses so many different aspects of society, so many different things that it's really hard to get a full picture of everything.
Yeah, and there's so much conflicting information, and it's hard to determine. I mean, as has been the issue for the last handful of years since social media and everything has kind of taken over the internet, it's hard to know what facts are real or what are bullshit or manipulated data or whatever, And
Yeah,
that's part of the problem that nobody can agree on anything anymore because we're not working from the same set of data like we used to. Like back in the day, you get, you turn on to the evening news, you had like 3 or 4 stations to pick from, and that's what you watched, and which I guess would have been closer to, I don't know. I mean, you had newspapers too, obviously, that were like really hard-hitting journalism and stuff, and now it's not like that at all, and it's like everybody can say they're a journalist if they want to. There's no standard bearer of, like you're not a journalist unless you have jumped through these hoops anymore. It's like I could set up a blog and I'm a journalist and I could write whatever bullshit I want and call it news and call it real and
yeah,
make money off of the ad income, which is really, let's get down to it. That's why they're all those, conspiracy theory sites. I guarantee they're all doing it because they know they can make money on it, not because they believe the shit they're putting out.
I don't know. I've met some people that believe some crazy shit, like the Illuminati lizard people are gonna steal the center of your toothpaste when you blink and shit. Yeah, there's some weird stuff out there.
Flat Earth.
Yeah, I mean everybody knows it's a disc on the back of 4 elephants on the back of a giant space turtle. I mean we all know that.
Yeah.
But,
You want to piss off a flat earther? Is like, well, if that's wrong, then then why are you like how are all those SpaceX satellites going up into the planet, or all those Amazon satellites that we saw the other night and all that shit?
the response that I've heard is that
how does the 5G work?
oh God, yeah. The response that I've heard is that satellites just aren't real. It's all propaganda.
Yeah, they're projections.
Yeah. But in all of that, do you have any other, I guess, artistic endeavors, any sort of like hobbies or something like that kind of help you cope with stressful situations? Anything that kind of takes you out of that?
Lately I've kind of been getting back into playing some music again. I was always a big band geek growing up, and I play a variety of instruments, none of them very well, but I've been playing drums. I've had this little drum set for a number of years I've been playing on, and I finally bit the bullet and took some of that tax money that I got from, you know, that little tiny mini tattoo tax season that we had.
Oh,
and
yeah.
My toy I was going to buy myself for this tax season was I finally got one of those digital electric drum kits. Of course,
yeah.
It's being held up by Amazon for forever. I've been waiting weeks for it. It's supposed to get here by the end of the month, but I'm excited about getting that to kind of bang around with, like a Bluetooth in with your music, so you can mix it in with what you're listening to, so it sounds good and stuff.
Oh no, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that, and just because it's kind of like, it's like a little bit of a physical activity also, so it kind of gets my, you know, I'm not much of an exercisey person, so it's something that kind of, you know, requires me to do a little bit of movement and coordination, and I'm hitting things, and it's fun. So.
Yeah, hitting things could always be kind of cathartic.
Yes. So that's kind of what that's like my one little thing I'm looking forward to, is maybe doing another little like live video where I like play along with the music kind of thing, like I did a couple weeks ago, and just not be afraid to make an ass of myself on like live stream on Facebook rather, you know, with like however many people watching. It's, you know, it's almost like kind of like going back to me challenging myself to like just do something instead of like worrying about the, you know, like I came up with that idea to do it, and I did it that night, and that was like kind of like my foray into trying to like be a little bit more like just do it. Like I just did it, and I had fun, and I want to do it again. I just want to do it with the new drums once I get them, so I can mix the music and have it actually sound better on the thing.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking from just my personal experience, the first, like, getting out there and just putting something out into the world is scary as hell. You don't know how it's going to be judged. You don't know how you're going to be judged. But at a certain point, it just doesn't matter. Like, other people's opinions of what you create and you in general, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, because I mean, like, the first YouTube video that I ever put out, I was scared shitless to upload that. Like, I did not want to put that out, but just something in me felt like, you need to do this. Just get over the hurdle of the first one. See what the response is like, and it comes back to, I'm gonna butcher this quote, I swear. It's something to the effect of, it will matter a lot less to you what people think of you when you realize how little they actually do. Because I mean, nobody out there is just like obsessing over you or what you create and just trying to pick out every little fault and flaw like you might see in it, because they've got their own shit going on. Like, they have their own lives and worries and likes and dislikes, and they're dealing with their own shit. I'm just hoping that some part of what I create kind of pulls them out of that and they get something from it.
Yeah. And also, you know, like, you know, with anything, you know, with art, you're going to have people that are going to be the haters that are going to find that one little thing you fucked up on and point it out. Like, point out, hey, Captain Obvious, you spelled this wrong on this video comment or something. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of, or like, they'll be like, you should do your lighting, blah, 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 or your audio sucks, you know? And it's like, hey, I'm aware of the flaws, but I did it.
Yeah, right? While they're not doing anything. And
it's kind of like with the one video, the first Annie Room video I did, I fucked something up, and it didn't record any of my audio. And I was so mad. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go back, and I'm going to, like, make question cards and have the question card come up, and then have
absolutely.
You know, and that was my workaround. And I was, like, so mad, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to use it. I'm going to work it. I'm going to make it work. And it worked out fine, and nobody would know the difference. Or, like, on the last one I uploaded, and I made little intros, and I thought I was going to break it into the two parts, and I ended up doing three. So kept the part of the intro where I said, in part 1 and 2, and I'm like, I just have a little thing come up that does the little title come up that says, actually I did 3, and I haven't heard anybody comment otherwise. So it's almost like if I call myself out on my mistake first, nobody else can fucking hurt me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's because nobody's perfect. Like no one is. It's not possible. But yeah, like everything. There's almost always a way to make it work. Always.
Yes.
But yeah, I totally agree with you. If you catch it and you call it out, and you realize that it's not perfect, but you still work with it, I mean, who can touch you on that?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, I know it's cheesy to kind of like think of like reality competition type shows, but like, it'll give you like a very limited time frame to do the assignment, and then they're going to critique. It's like, you're not going to do your best thing. Like, that's not like that. No matter what show it is, if it's like Ink Master or Forge and Fire or whatever, it's like that tattoo, that knife, or like that outfit you sewed is not going to be your best. And it sucks because you're on nationwide TV showing off your skills, and you're being forced to show your not best work because of the time restriction and the whatever the challenge rules are. So it's like almost like they're setting you up to look bad, and it's how you handle it is what they're looking for on the
100%,
program.
100%.
Because, and I feel like that's almost like what we do is, like as artists, like, because it's a process. Because like you don't just come out of the womb like an amazing artist. Like it makes it boring if like as an artist you have no growth or no change or evolution, because it's like, oh, like this person's an amazing painter and like they tattoo and it's amazing and it all looks the same, and then like you look at their work 5 years ago and you look at it 10 years down the road, you look at it and it all looks the fucking same, and it's like there's so many tattooers like that, like it's like it looks the fucking same. It's like God, I hate to call anybody out by name, but like Joe Capobianco, prime example. Like, you look at like something he did now versus what he did like 10, 15 years ago, it looks the same.
And to be fair, he built his entire career off of that style and that look, and it's still awesome.
It is. Like, but he's probably the only guy that could get away with doing that with that, because that's his his brand or whatever.
Yeah.
But everybody was copying it.
Oh God,
and
yeah.
Anybody that did that, nobody stuck with it. It's like only if you like kind of like invented it, you're the only one who sticks with it, and then everybody else is like, you got to move on past it. It's like you could visit it, you could do a couple like I can't tell you how many like close knockoffs I've done of like heavily inspired by not like rippers, not like trace master pieces, but definitely like style nods or like what do you call it? Homages.
Yeah.
Like of like whenever whoever's like at that moment, and I'm really trying hard not to do that as much now, of like kind of trend chasing, but it still happens, unfortunately. But it kind of helps me kind of find new things I want to do. But at the same time, it's like I look at the tattoos that I did in that style, like, ooh, that's dated. But it shows growth, though, and I want people to see that my work's improved or evolved or gotten more interesting, and like people could go like see where I started and then see, oh wow, like I love posting like a tattoo I did like 10 years ago and then posting one I just did that's a similar style, just look how I changed. And like that's where I get proud of my work, is whenever I see the growth over a long period of time and how I've evolved. And that's like, by comparing A to B is like pretty much the only way I can really feel like, yeah, I'm a good artist. I can see that I'm not as horrible as I think I am.
Yeah, and I mean, with anything that you do, it's going to be, you're not really competing with anybody else. You're just competing with you yesterday. Yeah. And I mean, and that's one of the things that I have to kind of convince myself of every single day. Like I have to retell myself every single piece I create. Like this is just a stepping stone. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is even if it doesn't if it turns out like absolute garbage, it's a learning experience. I learned something from it, and it's still better to create something imperfectly than to create nothing at all. But as far as like the I guess the more heavily influenced pieces that kind of lean towards other people's styles. I remember a quote from a while back that is, what is it? Originality is forgetting where you stole it from. Yeah, it's just you were obviously attracted to something about that style, and you whatever it was, hopefully kind of assimilated what you needed to take from that, and are now able to use that as part of your toolkit without it just looking like a ripoff of someone else.
And as far as like doing studies and stuff, like I am a huge fan of kind of just like the old masters did. I'm a huge fan of duplicating as a process to learn how to like for me, like I'll do it a lot with like lighting effects, or if I see a photo or like a tattoo or a painting or something, whatever it is, if I see it and there's something about it that I'm like, I really like how that looks, I wonder how that was done, and then I'll just basically copy it and kind of reverse engineer that piece, and then that in that process I learned something new.
Yeah. And
it could be like something with like color theory or shape or edge or a blending or just like an application of a mark, and I feel like that's really a good way to learn. You know, obviously there's a limit of acceptability on once you do a copy, what do you do with that piece when you're done? Like obviously I wouldn't put it up for sale or really show it to the public even. That's more for me as like homework or just practice. But
yeah, I think homework is a really good way to put that. Because it's study. Like you are learning something. Like it's just, I mean, you're not reading a book and taking a test. Like that's your way of kind of testing yourself to learn, to kind of dismantle whatever their process is, and kind of be able to keep that tool in your toolkit for the future.
Yeah.
So, exactly. So do you feel like we've covered... I mean, we've definitely covered a lot of ground here, but is there something that I should have asked you but haven't asked already? I mean, what should people know about you?
I'm pretty easy to, I guess. I mean, I don't put all my personal stuff on the internet at all, but I'm also a pretty basic, simple person, so that you can pretty much, I guess, find out anything about me by looking at my social media. If anybody's got any questions or wants to know more about what I do or how I do it or my processes, because I'm sure we could probably go on for hours and hours just talking about process and how we do things and approaches and, you know, how we think about stuff. I mean, there's just so many different ways to dismantle what we do, and workflow and tattoo workflow versus fine art workflow and things like that. I mean, yeah, I mean, I definitely, if anybody wants to, reach out to me, they can get a hold of me, and I'm always good to chat.
So where can people find you online?
All right, so I have a lot of ways that people can find me. You could find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook artist page. That's Ainslie Heilich Tattoo Artist. And, of course, my personal profile, which is totally open and public. I have an Instagram. My Instagram is @VintageKarma. I have a second Instagram, which is for my cover-up tattoos, which is @RedoYourTattoo. That has a website with it called RedoYourTattoo.com. That is all cover-ups, which is one of my tattoo specialties. And my regular tattoo shop for my business, the whole shop is artofvintagekarma.com. And, of course, any of the Oddfellows stuff, like the blog that I help run is the Heart and Hand blog. If anybody's interested in Oddfellowship, they can check out the Heart and Hand blog at oddfellowsguide.com, or hit me up on ioof.org. I totally butchered that. ioof.org. And you could, message the webmaster and you'll get to me. So.
Yeah, and for those that may not know what that is, the IOOF is the Independent Order of Odd Fellows.
Yes. And, we're on Facebook. We got a Facebook page. There's an Instagram page for it, at the _odd_fellows for Instagram. And, yeah, I love to talk to people about tattooing. I love to talk to people about Odd Fellows. And I love to talk to people about art and cats and whatever.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, I definitely appreciate you joining me on the call today, and
I appreciate you having me.
Oh, not a problem at all. It was an absolute blast.
Absolutely, we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely, we can make it happen. But
all right,
for now, I will see you later. All right, everybody, that was Ainslie Heilich. Definitely go find and follow Ainslie and check out the Vintage Karma Tattoo Shop. I'll put all of Ainslie's contact info in the show notes. And feel free to get a hold of me anytime through the contact page on my website. It's www.shaynesimmons.com, SHAYNESIMMONS.com, and absolutely find and follow me on all the social media platforms. As a matter of fact, we've got a couple new videos up on YouTube now. It was definitely fun talking to Ainslie, but until next time, stay red, y'all.